What's up everyone, Darcblade here with an additional patch information video regarding patch 5.00 for PlayStation 4 or 5.0.0.0 for Xbox One. Now I've already done a video covering this patch, going over all the new additional content as well as some of the bug fixes. However, at the end of the video when I got this information, Capcom stated that they would be potentially updating the bugs that this patch fixes at a later date. So in this video I'm going to go over some of the additional bug fixes that weren't covered in the first video. Now a brief overview of patch 5.00 is that it's released on August the 2nd for both consoles, and it introduces the Behemoth and the Final Fantasy XIV crossover event with Monster Hunter World. This brings us a new monster, new armor, a new insect glaive and more. If you're interested to see some of this in action, check out the first video, which will be in the link in the description below or at the end of the video. But anyway, what are the additional bug fixes that weren't covered in the first video? Well, first are bug fixes to the longsword. First, Capcom addressed a bug where the Spirit Blade attack would be performed on its own after a player fails to connect with a foresight slash when the R2 input would remain in the input buffer and executed after a side dodge was performed. This bug fix was worded a little bit unusual, but I'm kind of getting used to that from Capcom with Monster Hunter patches. Anyway, this basically fixes an issue that when you pressed R2 at a certain time, the game would remember that you pressed that button and perform it on its own after certain conditions was met. This has now been addressed and fixed. And next with the longsword, Capcom addressed a bug where the spirit gauge would not decrease and damage would not increase when the jumping Spirit Blade 3 connected on a target when your spirit gauge was at red. Damage will now be increased and the spirit gauge will be correctly consumed. Jumping Spirit Blade 3 is the airborne attack you make with R2 whilst your spirit gauge is at red. The next weapon they've made changes to is the insect glaive. Basically for the insect glaive they've addressed a bug that is related to the strong jumping advancing slash. Basically when you have the majority of your kinsect buffs and you press circle after vaulting. Before this fix, only the final attack of the jumping advancing slash would receive any benefits from the airborne skill, which increases your damage while airborne. Now basically all the attacks of the jumping advancing slash will receive the skill buff and thus have its damage increased. So taking the airborne skill is definitely going to be worth it for insect glaives. Next, moving on to the slinger. Now again, this bug fix is written a little bit unusual, but basically they addressed a bug where the circle button action would be performed after an R2 special weapon attack after the player jumps off a ledge with the circle button during the middle of a slinger ammo load animation. This includes the sword and shield when the weapon is drawn. Basically for this fix, Capcom have rendered all buffered inputs invalid during the slinger's loading animation. When buffering inputs are invalid, even during the sword and shield's unsheathed slinger loading animation, by cancelling the loading animation there won't be any noticeable differences. So the impact on controls should be minimal. Basically now when you go to load your slinger ammo by picking up stuff from the floor or from your item pouch, it will play out the full loading animation and you won't be able to input commands until the animation has finished. Personally, I've come across a few issues when loading slinger ammo and trying to do other things at the same time, so hopefully this smooths things out for the future. Anyway, next, moving on to the next bug fix. Now Capcom have appraised some weapons. Basically the elemental values for the Rarity 7 Turov Strong Arm Spark and Maya Charge Blaze have been changed. The Spark has had the thunder damage increased from 90 to 150, and the Turov Strong Arm Maya has had its water damage increased from 120 to 180. A buff for both of these weapons. Next, moving on to the specialized tools, Capcom addressed a bug where the usable time for mantles would decrease during animations such as sniffing tracks. It has now been fixed so mantles' usable times will not decrease when standing still, which was how they originally intended it to be, which is actually quite a buff for mantles. Next, moving on to bug changes with skills. They've made changes to two of them, although they are both to do with the wide range skill. First, they've addressed a bug and fixed an issue where the effective time of the core drink would be overwritten by a player using a core drink with the wide range skill active. This bug would not check the current cooldown effective time of the player and thus overwrite the core drink. It's now been fixed so that it will only be overwritten only when prolonging the effect of the item that the player was using. The same bug applies to the effects of might seeds and other similar items. Basically they would be overwritten by weaker effects produced by low level wide range skills. It has now been fixed so it will only be overwritten when the effect is larger than the one already applied. Next, with items, there's only one bug fix update at the moment. They fixed an issue to the easy life powder's effective range, as it was smaller than the regular life powder. It has now been increased to match the regular life powder's effective range. And then finally, another change to the target cameras. I know in the first video that there was already one bug fix to the target cameras, but there's been another one added. Basically, Capcom made a fix where if you're using the focus camera and lock onto a monster moving between areas, repeatedly locking on and cancelling the lock on would cause the camera to keep its focus on the monster. So they've now made it that the camera will now properly cancel the lock on completely. So anyway, that's about it for the additional bug fixes for patch 5.00. On Capcom's blog, they still have the disclaimer that they may add other updates, including ones related to weapons, at a later date, but I'm hoping this will be the last additional video I have to make on this patch. Nonetheless, this 4th free update is just around the corner, so we don't have long to wait. Additionally as well, there is still no news on the size of this update, and as soon as I know what it is, I'll pin a comment down below. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the additional bug fixes that comes with patch 5.00? Leave a comment down below. And until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a quick patch information video regarding some additional bug fixes for patch 5.00 or 5.0.0.0, otherwise known as the 4th free update in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.